Welcome back to Panic Button Podcast, where we talk about mental health, how we get through it, why we get through it, everything that looks like, the bad, the good, the ugly. You guys know the deal at this point. And jumping right into it, just kind of a mental health check-in. I'm still feeling pretty good. I think I'm finally on a good path where I'm very observant of my mood, and I'm able to kind of do little tips and tricks throughout the day to make sure that my anxiety is tamed, if you want to say. Whether that's along the lines of going outside for an extra couple of minutes or really just taking some time to myself to relax and kind of honestly meditate without meditating, like sitting there and be like, it's okay, like if I'm feeling anxious. So I don't know if anybody else has kind of found themselves doing that, just really paying more attention and being more observant to themselves. I feel like it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because I am one of those people for sure that when something is physically like bodily wrong, that gives my anxiety like a reason to be like spiked. So sometimes it's not good how observant I am. But I think, like I said, I'm learning a balance of being able to observe those things and know what to do to alleviate the anxiety once the things have been observed, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with things. Again, I will talk about the weather for 2 seconds just because, and my special guest I have on here will understand because we are both from Illinois. But a couple of days ago, we had tornado sirens going off, in the basement. It was hailing, the whole shebang. Okay. We did not get a tornado that touched down in my area. Luckily, I know it's not the same for other spots in Illinois. Unfortunately, there was some damage that was done. Pretty scary shit. But today it's 60 something degrees and tomorrow it's going to be 72. It's just like, I don't get it. And I am totally for the sunshine and what it does in mental health. And you guys know that. But like, what the fuck? Like, I'm ready to be like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, and now I'm ready to put on my swimsuit and go jump into the pool. So I don't know what the fuck is going on here. I'm still here for it, and I'll still probably always give you guys a weather update, because in Illinois, it's what we talk about. It's what we do. But without further ado, to get to the good stuff, what you guys have been waiting for, I do have special guest, Caitlyn. She's a licensed clinical social worker with her PEL in school social work, and she's certified clinical trauma professional. She also has spent 8 years working in the K through 12 system as a school social worker. She made the switch to providing therapy through higher education and private practice. So now she works with educators who are in need of emotional and mental wellness from someone who has experienced the education system firsthand, providing validation, support, and understanding to the day-to-day challenges teachers face. So without further ado, Caitlyn, are you here with us?
Yes, we are. How's it going? Again, crazy weather, right?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. I think another like Midwest staple is, it wouldn't be so bad outside if it weren't for the wind. I feel like I say that literally twice
Yes.
a week.
Like, yeah, the
So,
sun is out, but it's windy.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I'm glad that you're on board with understanding that in Illinois, like whatever level of conversation that you're having with somebody, the weather will be involved one way or the other at some point. Like, I
Oh,
promise you.
absolutely. I will like never forget in undergrad. I think it was probably end of April. Granted, I went to school out in Iowa, but like it was probably a week before graduation. Like you said, it had been 60s, 70s, beautiful. And then we got a snowstorm and we got like 8 inches of snow. And it was like, but truly, only in the Midwest will it have that drastic of a turn in like 24 hours. So I think it's just, I don't know. I guess it's our like MO, right? Just craziness all around.
Yeah, and sometimes it's kind of cool because like sometimes you think about like, okay, well, I should just move and go live somewhere that it's only sunny.
Hmm.
But when you think about it, it is kind of interesting to live somewhere that you do experience all of that.
Oh,
Like, and it could be
absolutely.
in the same fucking month. Like,
Oh,
again, we had
100%.
snow. 2 days later, we had a tornado warning, and tornadoes had touched down in some places. And today and tomorrow, 60 and 70 degrees. Like, where
Right.
else do you get that?
Well, and I guess it's like what is your alternative, right? Like you move to like Arizona and like yeah, you get consistent hot, but then you've got like big fucking bugs and like scorpions and tarantulas and shit. So it's just like like what's the evil I want to deal with, you know? Like crazy
Right?
weather
Yeah.
or yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
rather, my thing is, I'd rather deal with all this bullshit and be around my family because
Yeah.
at least like a family's here and this is where I grew up. So I'm like, yeah, I'd love to move to like the East Coast somewhere, like one of the Carolinas or
Mhm.
something. But then I'm just like, then you
Then you
got to
got
deal with all
hurricanes,
that
you know?
bullshit alone. Right. And there's
Yeah.
hurricanes. So I'm like, you know what? I'll stay right here and play Russian roulette with the weather because
You
that's what
just
we
gotta
like
pick
to
your
do.
poison. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Pick your poison. That's for sure.
Mhm.
All right. So jumping into obviously what people listen to me for, tell us a little bit about your mental health journey.
Yeah. So I feel like, I don't know, and I guess other millennials may feel this way too, but like I really don't feel as if like even like high school and college, right? Like mental health was really talked about, in the way that it is today. And so I don't feel like I like experienced a, I don't know, like mental health crisis or like awareness of how I was feeling until I was in graduate school, like studying social work. And so, as I was kind of going through my own difficulties with, choosing a job and, a concentration in the program, I was experiencing a breakup at the time, and then my parents were getting divorced. And so it was just like, as I was learning, about this, entire field of, what is anxiety, what is depression, because I feel like growing up, I guess I had heard the words, but didn't really know what those feelings were and what they meant, until I started experiencing them for myself, but then being able to accurately be like, okay, this isn't normal. What I'm feeling is depression. Um, and so that occurred when I was probably, yeah, 24, 25. And I was like, well, what's great timing because I'm going through this master's program for mental health. But I was able
Ta-da!
to, right. Yeah, exactly. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like just as like 90s kids and then growing up in like the early 2000s, it's just, the conversation around knowing what's wrong with us has just blossomed. And it's just insane how, looking back on it now, we can kind of like look at our friends and be like, oh yeah, dude, like that's probably what that was. It's probably crippling anxiety or, ADHD. I've had so many friends where they're like, now as adults, we're like, we probably had these things and at least had them when we were kids, but we just didn't know, right? It just, the awareness just wasn't there. Um, and so that's kind of when I started to, not only professionally kind of understand mental health, but, personally as what I was going through and being able to accurately label it.
Yeah, and I resonate a lot with that. Um, I have battled anxiety for 7 years, and people are probably like, "Holy shit, we know!" Like I always say it, but it started in college, and it was my
Mm-hmm.
senior year, and I'm a millennial as well. At least I think I am. I don't know. I don't understand all those things. I'm gonna be 30 years old this year, so I think I'm a millennial.
Yeah, I actually had to Google a couple weeks ago, like, okay, like what is the cutoff for boomer? What's the cutoff for millennial, Gen Z?
Right?
Because I
Like
was like, it is
we're
blurred.
in that range, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
okay, perfect.
No,
So
absolutely.
I got something right today. So yes, being a millennial myself, when I was in college my senior year, so that would have been 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't talked about. And then
Yeah.
I have repeatedly have said this on other episodes where I wasn't informed of what to do. It was just like, here's a
Mm-hmm.
prescription. Have a nice day. You might want to
Absolutely.
talk to a therapist at some point, but so I didn't really start getting more information until I kind of did some digging on my own. But even then, it was kind of like, it was just very transactional. Like, went to the doctor. Okay, you have generalized anxiety disorder, and it looks like you have some panic disorder. Here's some medication. It'll help. Again, talk to a therapist probably. When you go home, see your primary physician. And, even when I went to my primary physician, they had stated like the same thing. It was never
Mm-hmm.
like, here's what this could look like for you. Here's how it might present itself. So it was really a lot of figuring it out on my own of like, oh shit, like this is what they were talking about. Like, sitting in a corner, like having issues like moving and panicking
Mm-hmm.
and feeling like the walls were caving in and just like that overwhelming fear. So it sucks that I feel like millennials specifically, because if I'm what is the word? If I am thinking of the correct age, like the years that
Mm-hmm.
millennials fall into, we didn't talk about mental health.
Right.
Like
Right.
it was not talked about. And I
No.
think Gen Z, because that's the one after us, right? Those the young kids now.
Correct.
Okay,
Them
those are
young
those
people.
young
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
fucker
Yeah.
doodles. Okay,
Yeah.
so in their generation, I think that they are talking about mental health more,
Yeah.
though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind
Absolutely.
of like other generations have paved the way, because what's interesting is like my mom's generation, they didn't talk about mental health, and I'm sure with your
Mm-hmm.
parents they could agree with that. You
Yeah.
know, it was more transactional like us. You go to the doctor if you don't feel right, or you just kind of kept it to yourself and pushed it under the rug and
Mm-hmm.
accepted that some days you felt like shit,
Like, oh
didn't
yeah, this is
understand what
fine.
it was coming from or like what was going on. I mean, you knew you weren't dying, but there was obviously something off.
Mm-hmm.
And Gen Z, I think, is really pushing things in the right direction where they're more aware of it. Like, I still don't think ultimately we are having enough conversations about mental health as a community itself, in society. But I think that, I mean, just like you said, you hit it on the head. I mean, you learn more about it when you were studying it. Otherwise, it kind of just would have been like, it is what it is.
Right, absolutely. And like even and you know just kind of after discussing like where we're both from, it's like even at like our school districts, right? Like probably similar in size and support and things like that, like of kind of where we grew up. Like I had no idea that my high school had a psychologist, had a social worker. I didn't know anything outside of like an academic counselor, right, who helps you pick your classes. And so and I graduated high school in 2009. Right. So it's like that wasn't really that long ago. And I had no idea what a social worker even was. And kind of going further to like what you said, just being in undergrad, I graduated in 2013 and we had like a student health center that I didn't even know that there were counselors at, right? Or other like mental health professionals. I thought it was just you're sick, you go there, they try and help you out. They actually nicknamed it the student death center because they were like, yeah, nothing good comes out of there. They don't actually help you, whatever. And so it was actually like this like deterrent of like, don't go there. It's not very helpful. And so I truly didn't know like what a social worker was until I was, getting ready to graduate and look at, programs of, do I want to go into marriage and family therapy? Do I want to get a PhD? And I actually had an academic advisor be like, well, have you looked at social work? And so I think it's just, but now, especially having worked in schools, it's like you go to the social worker for everything, right? Like if you're, if you're crying and having a hard day, if your parents are getting divorced, if your dog died, if you're, having a difficult time with a peer, it's like we utilize social workers and counselors and school psychologists now for like everything. Where it's like when we were kids, I mean, I don't know. I don't think in middle school I knew that there was like a social worker. It's crazy how far it's come in such a short time. Like you said, some ways to go, but it is wild. Like even the last like 5 to 10 years, like how much has developed.
Yeah, because again, yeah, I also agree. I did not know that my schools growing up provided those things. I mean, if you showed
Hmm.
up crying, they'd be like, "Do you not feel good? Go to the nurse."
Right. No,
You know,
absolutely.
like
Yeah.
honestly, like that's kind of how it was. It wasn't like I didn't know all of these resources were available.
Right.
And I don't necessarily know if they were. I'm sure there was someone there that specialized, in social work, or somebody was
Hmm.
there that was able to help. But yeah, it was definitely not talked about or pushed. And then at my college, I went to college downstate. And yeah, I mean, you knew you had a doctor's office, kind of like a health center, and they didn't call it anything cool like you guys did. But, you went there and that was it. You got medication if you were sick. And
Hmm.
yeah, so it was kind of, again, just very transactional. Like, oh, you don't feel good? Okay, like, here's
Right.
your medication. Have a nice day.
Well, and even
So,
in grad school, when I kind of was realizing, okay, like you said, what I'm feeling is depression, right? Like I have no appetite, I don't want to get out of bed, I'm crying all the time, I'm napping 3 times a day. Like, what do I do? And everyone said, well, not even go to a therapist, but go talk to your doctor. And so I think over like a break, I had gone to grad school, back here in Chicago, and I, went home for a weekend and I made an appointment. And even then it was, tell me what's going on. me breaking down in like the doctor's office, crying, listing off all the things that are causing me stress. And it was just, okay, here's a prescription for Prozac. It wasn't even like follow up with a therapist, like you were saying. It was just, let me know if anything's not working. And so, like,
Yeah.
granted, the medication did help, but it was like, and that was 2014, 2015. So it's like, that's, even under 10 years ago, where it was, okay, I have this girl crying in my office, about how, she went through a breakup, her parents are getting divorced, and she's in grad school. Yeah, that's a lot. Here's some Prozac, so it was just like,
Have a
oh,
nice
okay,
day.
yeah, that was easy. Like,
Go
all
take
right,
your happy
cool.
pill.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and it's funny because, yeah, and not to, I do enjoy my, primary care doctor, but it was just like at that time, there wasn't even like a, here's a list of some people that you could talk to. And maybe it was assumed that, oh, you're in, school for social work, you know what to do. But it's like, but I, at that time, I don't know, I'm 23, 24, I don't know what I'm
Right. That's
doing.
a big,
So,
that's kind of like a big assumption to make if that is the
right.
case. It's almost like, I feel like they're doing you a disservice at that point because you're going
Mm-hmm.
in and you're stating all of these things, like you said, and they're just like, yeah, here's your prescription. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, all right. Like,
Like, well,
because
great.
that doesn't even explain to you, unfortunately, like, I've spoke with people before that are other therapists and that work in the industry as well that have mental illnesses and battle their own. And they have just said, like, it is so concerning almost that some of these physicians don't even tell you like what you can experience being on these
Mm-hmm.
medications that could alter like that mental illness for a little bit.
Yeah,
For me,
absolutely.
for example, like I spoke about this before, so people are going to be like, holy shit, she forgets what she says. No, I don't forget it. I just repeat myself because there is value to be brought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's just, my physician was like, he wasn't doing what I needed him to do. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I need to go to a psychiatrist. So long story short, went to a psychiatrist, wanted to go to somebody that specialized in mental health and what that looked like a little bit more. And she was like, yes, I think we should change your medication. So I went through all of that. But at no point did my primary physician or the psychiatrist had mentioned to me all of the side effects that I would be feeling being on medicine for 7 years and then making that
Yeah.
switch.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only been about 2 months now, and I still experience some of those things because I did have to go up a dose from what I had started on.
Mm-hmm.
So, even what that looks like. So it's really just kind of like survival of the fittest sometimes where you have to be your own advocate and do your own research. And it's sad. So that is where I'm just like, this is what we need to change. And
Right.
any way we need to make that happen, like we need to make the conversations about mental health, medication, therapy, all those things, side effects, like more attainable to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it's like we're going to professionals for their guidance, right? And so it's like not that you shouldn't do your own research, but it's like, why am I the one having to discover all this, right? It's kind of like whenever I hear about like people who, give 13, 14, 15-year-olds Klonopin for anxiety. And it's like you realize like how addictive that is and how hard that is to wean off of, right? And it's like then you get these like 16-year-olds that are on it for 10 years and it's like then we're googling like what are the side effects of Klonopin? Like, how bad is this for me? And it's like, "Oh my god, like this is something that like should not have been prescribed to me or I was not educated on," and they like just assumed, everything would be okay and yeah, it's fine, you got it, Godspeed. And so it's like we go to professionals for this, for their insight and for their opinion and for their treatment, and then it's like but you end up having to do so much, like you said, education on your own where it's like shouldn't this have kind of been upfront information of, like you said, a warning of here are the side effects, or here's, how long it might take, or you may experience X, Y, or Z. And it's like, well, I know I'm going to have to, Google this later anyway. So yeah, it's hard to kind of, I guess justify, okay, do I want to get on medication? Well, I guess I'm going to have to do my research before going in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I always am honest with people where I'm like, I am on medication. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm somewhere in my life where that is what I need to do, as well as previously, I didn't have the tools to kind of organically get through things that I'd like to get through. but the medication obviously helps. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally for both sides. Don't ever try to sway people to one side or the other.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely having information is key. And it's just sad sometimes that we have to like be our biggest advocate to understand these things, acknowledge what the reality of mental health illnesses are. So it's crazy sometimes that that's the world that we still live in, where I mean you can get all of these prescriptions if you qualify to do so,
Mm-hmm.
but again you don't necessarily know side effects, what that looks like long term, or and there's obviously a risk to everything. Like we can't say that taking some of these medications for 20-30 years there's no risks, or that there's 100% risks. So
Right.
it's just, yeah, it's doing your research for yourself and being informed, but I wish that conversation was more open with physicians as well. I mean, I think that would make it a lot easier, especially for kids.
Oh, absolutely. And just, I was literally thinking of that as you were saying it, is just even with, like kids in the school system, it's like someone gets labeled with ADHD and it's like, okay, when should we, give them medication, or, when should we send them, out for like a neuropsych eval and, see if they need to be on Adderall. And it's like, okay, but also, pump the brakes a little bit. You have a 5-year-old boy who probably has a lot of energy. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I feel like the medication answer is always very quick. And it's like, okay, I feel like it is helpful in a lot of cases and for a lot of people, but I feel like there's also instances where it's like, okay, like let's weigh out the pros and cons of this, where it's like, is
Yeah.
this necessary right now? Or is this something that, like you said, we can try other avenues and other things first, and maybe it's partnering, certain things with medication or one or the other. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to, especially seeing it with kids, just at such a young age in schools now as well.
So what do you tend to see? What do you do day in and day out with the education system? What does that look like?
Yeah, so now I'm working at a university in the Chicago suburbs. But prior to that, I was working with, K-12 students. I've worked in high schools, middle schools, elementary. And the biggest thing I feel like with the younger grades was a lot of, and I guess, kind of depends on what district you're in, right? And I think it depends on the resources and the socioeconomic status and different cultures and things like that. But I experienced in a couple different districts where it was, like I was saying earlier, like someone has a lot of energy, or they don't want to do their homework or whatever, and parents really want a label. And so there was a district I worked in, and there were parents that would take their kids to 2 or 3 different like neuropsychologists and try to have a diagnosis of ADHD or learning disability or something, because it was like, no, I know something's wrong with my kid. I need a label, I need an IEP, and we're going to try to get them on medication. And it's like, okay, they're still very young. What else can we try? What other interventions can we put into place? Now working with college students, I think kind of like going back to what you said with this generation is they are all very just aware, right? And like reading themselves and like, what is something that I should, pursue therapy for, or go and get a evaluation, or, seek out a psychiatrist. But they are just very aware and in tune with how they're feeling. Um, I think with college students right now, and I think just with emerging adults, and even with ourselves, I guess, like in our millennial generation, I think we're having more of a difficult time now kind of discerning what's uncomfortable and what's unbearable. So I'll often have, students come in regarding anxiety. I, think I need to speak to, the psychiatrist that we contract out with. I'm having anxiety about, my midterms coming up. And it's like, okay, well, that's uncomfortable, but that's not unbearable,
Right.
right? Like there is a healthy level of anxiety to have, whether it's, nerves before a presentation, again, midterms, finals, things like that, or is it debilitating to where I cannot get out of bed, I cannot function, I feel like this anxiety is, again, less uncomfortable. It's more of, okay, I cannot control this, and it's, impacting my functioning. But again, I think it's great to see kind of regardless if it's, trying to figure out the difference between the two, I think it's great that there's just awareness in people that are that, kind of in tune with where they're at and how they're feeling. Cause I think that's what's going to start it, right? Is just how to read yourself. Because I feel like we were saying in the past, it's, no one's really known how to do that.
Yeah, and being very self-aware is important and acknowledging like what you're going through and understanding what it means. Because yeah, I mean, it was almost like if I would have had those tools younger, I feel like maybe I would have noticed that I had gotten more anxious at times and I didn't like being away from my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what all of those things meant until one day I kind of just like landed on my butt. So yeah, it's good that people are starting to acknowledge what they're going through, not even just physically, but mentally, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that was as easy for us as millennials to do that. And I
Right.
think that's where, Gen Z is doing a great job of opening up the door more to have those conversations. I know that social media plays a huge impact on that. I mean, social media could be good and social media could be bad. Obviously people have their ideations that they put towards the two of them, but
Mm-hmm.
again, it's just another resource for these kids though. They're able to learn about things that school hasn't taught them, and if
Yeah.
they resonate with it and it's something they're like, "Oh, that could be me." Well, then they also have the tools to go to someone like you to talk about it
Mm-hmm.
with.
Yeah, and I think kind of like you said, I think the internet is both a great and a not so great place where it's, it is very informative. But I think we've all kind of been in the position where it's like you Google a headache and it tells you that you have cancer and that,
Oh,
you're
I
going to
should have
lose a
been
limb and
dead.
you're going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this isn't helpful. But I do think, a lot of my students, utilize, TikTok and, Instagram and things like that to, inform themselves of, what do these diagnoses look like? And I think it's just at this point, kind of educating them on and moving forward, like what's a credible source, right? I've had some students come in, hey, I, saw this, Instagram post, that's, verified by a, psychiatrist or, a doctor that's in New York who, puts out, informational posts or reels. And this sounds a lot like me, what do you think? And they ask for my opinion on that. I've also had students come in and tell me that they watch a TikTok and they feel like they have dissociative identity disorder. And it's not only them, but it's 6 of their friends that all have multiple personalities. And I'm like, okay, well, the chances
Right.
that there's
Let's
6 of
take a
you,
step back for a
right,
minute.
right.
Like,
So I think, that like you said, there's pros and cons to both where it's, okay, are you
right.
self-diagnosing yourself with autism from a TikTok account that has 2 followers and that puts out questionable content? Like, okay, like
Right.
let's
Like, this
shift it
might not
back.
be the
Like,
most credible source,
right.
like, let's take a
Yeah,
step back
absolutely.
and
Right. So I think, just with how, kind of digital everything is now, it's going to be educating even more of, yes, the internet is a great place to gain information. How do you verify that it's valid?
right,
How do you
exactly.
verify that, yeah, it is credible? Because, yeah, otherwise it's like, I mean, they could be telling you that you're a potato and, you hear it enough times from enough, accounts. You're like, oh my God, maybe I'm a potato, and so I think
I
it's
am in fact
just,
an actual potato,
yeah,
right.
absolutely. It's in the DSM. So yeah, I think internet is great for a lot of things, but I think as we're continuing to just grow and utilize that as a resource, I think it's just going to be, educating, okay, how do I find, kind of like when we were writing papers, it was like in college and high school, don't use Wikipedia because it's not 100%, correct or whatever.
Right.
Now it's going
That's
to be
like the
like,
equivalent to TikTok. Do
yeah,
not,
now it's going to be,
not
can I
use
cite
that
the
as your
TikTok?
source.
Yeah. Can I cite this certain TikTok because has a lot of good information? Well, how do you know that it's reputable? So I think, yeah,
Right.
in the future, we might be getting to that point.
Right? No. Yeah, I agree with that, and that's funny. And yeah, as a parent, it's like you see the value that social media brings, but you also see the not so good benefits of social media.
Mm-hmm.
But I am a firm believer, and people are going to probably judge this, and that's what we do as a society. But I think that if I like don't allow my son to be exposed to certain things that he's curious about,
Mm-hmm.
that ends up being a bigger issue.
Yeah.
So, like, he'll want to play on his iPad, and I'll be like, okay, well, if we're playing on our iPad, we're not watching TV. Like, we don't need to be a zombie. We're not doing both.
Mm-hmm.
So I pick and choose my battles as a parent from that standpoint, because I do understand the value that it's a kid's tablet. It's all limited. It's games. It's fun. It's educational. But then he turns it on and downloads stuff and does this and that. And he learned that on his own to do that. I never taught him that. So it's kind of like that crazy factor. They say you give a kid a phone and they could make a phone call.
Oh, 100%.
Like, it's crazy, but I've just decided, like, that's not a hill I want to die on. That if I don't, like, if I try to shelter him and expose him, or not expose him, but keep him away from those things, like, it's not doing him any good.
Right.
You know, so it's all about the limitation and the boundaries you set with your kids. And I've said this before, is I try to always have open conversations with my son about how he's feeling, how he'll continue to feel through life, you know, what hurts someone's feelings, just making it a safe place to be able to discuss those things. And, you know, he's only going to be 4. So half the time he's probably like, Mom, what the hell are you talking about? You know,
like, I don't know what this means.
I just want to go play with my trucks. Like,
right.
But
well, and I think with technology too, it's like, kind of like you said, it's the regulation, right? Where it's like, okay, you know, putting a boundary in place of, I mean, it's like when we were growing up though, you know, when, you know, with like TV and, I mean, not that we're that old, but I mean, like, okay, how much TV can I watch before my mom oh my God, I know. I'm like 33. What are we doing? But you know, it was like, how much TV can I watch before my mom would kick me outside and be like, go do something, you know, or, you know, even like the PlayStation and Xbox that, you know, I remember when Xbox One was released and it was like, oh my God, everyone just wanted to sit there and play Halo for hours. And it was like, no, our parents like set a cutoff, right? Which is what you should do now. You know, it's all the same. It's technology. And so, you know, I think that's appropriate of like, I'm not going to tell you no because, you know, what do they say? Like, sheltered kids are sneaky kids, right? So it's like, if you tell them, no, you can't do this, eventually there's going to be some pushback of, well, I'm going to do it without you knowing about it. And so it's like, okay, you know, yeah, have it for an hour, but then we're going to do something else. Right. And I think it's just, you know, kind of utilizing that same methodology that we had.
It's about the balance too.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's giving kids that balance of, I'm not going to feel like a bad parent because he's on his tablet for like 20, 30 minutes. Because I know after 20, 30 minutes, usually he's bored and he's moved on to the next thing anyways.
Right.
But it's all in, you know, doses. Like, obviously, I'm not going to let him sit there over hours and hours and just be mindlessly holding a tablet and getting like, I'm like, dude, your eyes are going to get like goofy if you keep staring at that thing. So well, it's all in moderation.
When, like when MySpace, you know, came, and again, I'm dating myself, but it was like, you had to be 18 or older. And like, if your parents told you couldn't sign up for it, what did you do? You lied about your age on MySpace so you can make a MySpace page. So it's like you said, like, kids are resourceful. It's like,
oh yeah, I think mine said I was like 50 or something because I didn't know like math really either, right? Right.
I love that.
You didn't know math very well. You knew you had to be 18. So you're like, yeah, this looks good. Boom, in.
Should check out.
Not sketchy at all.
Right. No, this lines up.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's crazy with kids. And, you know, I'm interested to hear from your perspective dealing with emerging adults that come to you with certain issues. Do they ever discuss that these issues have started at home at a younger age, or do the conversations not really go to that extent?
I feel like, you know, it's kind of half and half, where it's something that, you know, started when they were kids, or, you know, I've always dealt with anxiety, or I've, you know, had depression, you know, or depressive symptoms since, you know, this event in my life. But I also feel like it's been a lot of, you know, I didn't notice this when I was a kid, but as I went through high school and into college, it's something that developed. So I'd say it's pretty, you know, pretty split down the middle, just in terms of like when things manifest, I guess. You know, a lot of it coming from the pandemic. A lot of it coming from...
That probably ruined a lot for Gen Z, to be honest.
Oh my gosh,
we think that we had it hard as millennials going through it.
Yeah.
But they're young.
Yeah, it's been a lot of pandemic and a lot of, and not to, I know I don't want to stir the pot, but a lot of like 2016 election, 2020 election, like I get a lot of kids who are very, very passionate about those things. And it's like, this event is really what kind of sent me into, a spiral with this, that, or the other thing. And, it's just continued from there. Or it's built upon something else. So I feel like, most of, today, it's a lot, like top three is probably anxiety, depression, then, PTSD or like a traumatic event. Whether that's, like natural disasters, things like that, occur like outside of our control in that
Sure.
aspect. But then, also, sexual assault, parental abuse, things like that. So
Right.
I think those are probably, the top three now. And like I said, it's either they're able to identify something, specific from when they were younger, or now recognize a pattern with a parent or a sibling or something like that has been occurring, or it's been, like I said, yeah, kind of around pandemic time. And then it's just, increased and built upon itself.
Yeah, I guess we don't think about what the pandemic kind of did for a lot of people. I mean, from a mental health standpoint, I think it affected all of us.
Mm-hmm.
It was scary, scary shit. And that's the reality of it. And we don't like to think about how things affect us mental health wise. So, yeah, it's definitely scary for Gen Z, I'm sure, to have felt whatever they felt and battled whatever they battled during that time, and what they do see online and what they read and
Mm-hmm.
all the things they have access to. When we were kids, we didn't have access to those things. I couldn't go on my phone and go online and look at all
Oh,
these things. I
absolutely.
went on my phone and you could either text or call somebody.
Right. And then if you accidentally opened up the internet, you like hit end as, many
Yeah,
times as
otherwise your
possible, because like
parents
it's
would get
going to
like
go
an
on my bill and my
$80
parents are going to
bill,
kill me.
right? Yeah, exactly. Like you got an $80 bill,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
your mom was like, "What the hell were you
What
doing?"
the
And it's
fuck were
like, "It
you
was an
doing?
accident. I'm sorry."
Well, and I even think I was listening to your episode last week, and even, the question of like, were you an introvert, like before or after you started therapy, or being a therapist. And I was
Yeah.
thinking about it, and
Yep.
I was even thinking like a little bit further of that, of like, was I an introvert before or after pandemic? And it's like, think of myself in, college in my early 20s and just being so eager to go do things and, talk to people and meet people and, go to concerts, events, things like that. And it's like, since the pandemic, it's like, I have never been more excited to like go home on a Friday at 5 and just like get in my pajamas, order food, and sit at home at like 6 p.m. and be ready for bed. Like,
Yes. And
it's
I agree with that
interesting.
completely to a T.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's wild how, just, and maybe it's just being, hitting 30 in that shift too, but I think it was just like, wow, like I really don't think we understand, how much the pandemic, impacted just our, like you were talking about, social battery. And then, for the kids that are trying to go through college, that's another thing that I feel like hasn't fully rebounded yet. And what I'm seeing a lot of, like, university level is students are wanting to meet people and they're wanting to engage in activities and, be a part of a community. And granted, the university that I'm at is smaller, but, there's not a lot of, individuals that are participating. And so it's like, you'll have, students that come in, the school has, 5,000-6,000 kids, and it's, what's your primary, kind of area of concern? Why are you seeking out therapy? And there's so many that say, I've been going here for 2 years, but I still don't have a sense of community. And like, I still don't have, quote unquote friends. I still don't have, individuals that I, hang out with. And on the weekends, I sit in my dorm room. And it's like, oh my gosh, I think about when I was in college, and granted it was a bigger state school, but there was stuff always going on and people always going to things. And so, like you were saying with Gen Z and beyond, it's like they've been kind of robbed of like the experience of socializing and events and going to things together, and everything's so online, even prior to the pandemic, when, things started to kind of emerge that way of just like meeting people on apps. And it's like, there's so many, students that come to me and they're like, I haven't made any friends. I've been here 3 years. How do I not have any friends? And it's heartbreaking. It's so
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it
So,
honestly like scared the shit out of us. Like, it's hard to get back into the swing of things, even as
hmm
adults. I think that yeah, I mean, the pandemic totally instilled that fear into me. Like you go out, you're going to get sick. Now, it's not that I think that I go out and I'm going to get sick, but I definitely still pick and choose my battles. You're not going to see me in like a room full of people just hanging out for
Right.
no specific reason. The most populated thing I've done recently is I took my niece and some family to Disney on Ice, and
Mm-hmm.
it still crossed my mind at that point, like, is one of us gonna go home with COVID?
Right. Oh,
Like,
100%.
so it's scary, and it's terrible what that instilled in our heads, and it's terrible what Gen Z has to go through and what everybody else has gone through and how that really did alter us after and what that looks like. I know we are still constantly trying to make life get back to normal. Things are okay, but you're still hearing of COVID. It was on
Right.
the news today for me when I turned on the news, where
Mm-hmm.
the CDC just changed the regulations for quarantine. It's only
Oh
24
my
hours
gosh.
now.
Yeah. And but it's so
So
hard to keep
it's,
up with like what do you do, right? I had gotten COVID earlier this year. It was my second time getting it. I gotten it in
ugh,
January. I don't even know
I've had
how
it
I got
4 times.
Oh my, 4 times. Oh my gosh.
Yes,
Oh
and
my
I'm
gosh. Yeah.
vaccinated. So I'm not saying anything bad because I got
Right.
vaccinated for my specific reasons. And I
Right.
understand, like, getting the vaccination did not equal not getting COVID. But I'm
Right.
like, something's got to give. Like,
Well, and like you said though, it's so hard to keep track of like what are we supposed to do because yeah, back in January, I texted my boss and like the nurse of the university. I was like, I don't even know what the guidelines are anymore. Like, what do y'all need me to do? Like, what do you need me to do?
do I stay where I'm
Because
at? Do I come in?
right.
Like,
And it's just shifting, I mean, all over. Like again, I was in, working in working with younger kids in K-12, and for a while it was you need to be at home for 5 days. Everyone had COVID
yeah,
days instead
yep,
of sick days. And so, but now it's like you don't get those COVID days, you just have to borrow from your sick bank. And it's like, well, wait, what the hell? No, it's still a thing. It's still a problem that's going on.
yeah.
Why? Yeah, so I feel like it's hard to keep up with like what
It
what
is
we're
because
supposed to do and what we're
it's
supposed to know.
always changing. So it's just
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
it's exhausting too. And it's like, they preach, let's move on, like, let's continue our lives, things get back to normal, schools open up, kids are in
Mhm.
classes, entertainment places are backing up, restaurants, all good. Like, we're all good there. But then, yeah,
Mhm.
you throw in, well, yeah, it's not 5 days, it's going to be 24 hours now. And it's just like, well, that's to me, that just, like, and this is totally off topic, but to me that just raises, like, the concern of, like, how all of a sudden is it now only 24 hours? Like, how
Yeah.
can you, like, actually justify that switch? And again, I'm not a medical professional. I never claimed to be. Like, I'm just here, like, shooting the shit and just speaking my opinion. But I don't know, to me it's just the moral of all of it has made things very uneasy as a community, as the world, as everything.
Mhm.
And it is really sad to see those effects it has had on these kids growing up. Because at least as adults, we're a little bit more adverse and understand what's going on, and we're able to process it.
Mhm.
Obviously, when you're younger, all the hormonal changes, and then you have all these life changes.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's as if growing up for kids isn't hard enough. Like, we had to, like, have a pandemic.
Oh, 100%. And I think like what you were saying just in terms of like socially anxiety, depression, like, even, kind of beyond that is just like behaviorally, working with, younger kids who were in first, second, third, fourth grade who were going through the pandemic. I mean, the behaviors in the school system are insane. And I don't know if you have any friends who are teachers or in education, but like it is wild what is happening right now in schools in regards to behavior. And I don't mean just, like with, special education students who have, behaviors, due to their diagnoses. I mean, like general ed, like neurotypical students that are, I mean, it's insane what's happening, kind of across our school system as, I think, parenting has one aspect of it, but like, as a result of the pandemic, just how many students that not being in school and trying to learn at home, how negatively that just impacted their behavior, and then how to translate, back into school and transition back and like, okay, what do we do now? It's been whiplash for some of these kids, and it's absolutely crazy to witness some of the impacts of COVID, like you were saying, on younger kids that are in school.
Yeah, it's crazy and it's a scary time to be a parent. You never know what this world is going to throw at you because we didn't deal with the same things that our kids are
Hmm.
dealing with right now.
Yeah.
But, we figure it out, we manage. And I just like to tell people, you know, it's day by day. And
Hmm.
you just have to make sure that you give your kids that are growing up right now a safe space to talk about whatever they want to talk about.
Hmm.
I think that brings a lot of value to a relationship, to a child's life, to everything. I had that growing up where I always felt comfortable, even if I knew I was going to get grounded or if my mom was going to kick my ass,
Hmm.
anything along those lines, which she's never kicked my ass, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
you
My
know,
mom was similar, where it was, I would rather you call me than something bad happen. And, I would rather, you trust that I will get you out of that situation and that you won't be, not in trouble, but like you said, yeah, I'm not gonna like come and scream at you, but I'm here to help. Um, and yeah, absolutely. I think it's just everything is, like you said, everything's changed so fast. It's navigating, parents with how to parent. It's navigating, kids how to, kind of, grow up in this, in this day and age. It's, like you said, emerging adults trying to find their place. It's, educators trying to figure out how to, kind of juggle all of the changes that are coming with, their jobs in the system and the kids coming in. It's just we're all kind of in this massive transitional period at the same time, and which I think is what makes it feel like a clusterfuck, right? Is it's like
yeah,
everyone is still trying to figure out, wait, what do I do now? And so it's like it feels even more chaotic because like no one has their shit figured out. And it's just like, okay, at least we're all in good
it makes
company,
you
right?
feel
Like,
good, right? Yeah, at least
yeah,
we're all on the same boat.
yeah, absolutely.
And to me, that brings up a interesting point that I like to ask the people that I've met in this community. How work it's funny, but it's not how working. A lot of people that work in the field that you work in, therapists, social work, anything along those lines, they battle mental health illnesses themselves, and we
Mm-hmm.
don't take the time to stop and think about that. So I like to give my friends that I've met in this community that do work in the field like time to really like speak, like what do you do to get through, like how do you stay on your path when you've battled mental illness and now you have these emerging adults coming to you also doing the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's and even, I mean, even working with like the younger kids, if you're having, an anxiety attack at work, it's like, okay, I have to go like run this group with 5-year-olds or with, 10-year-olds and put on a happy face and like try to make it through the next 45 minutes, even though I feel like I'm splitting at the seams, right? And so I think which again, I think you experience with any job, right? Where it's like if you're in
For
finance or
sure.
if you're in, working with
Yeah, all just
insurance
the
or things like.
societal pressures as
Right.
well.
Like
Yeah.
we have to be able to, to power through. But I feel like we're working in education or working even in, as like a therapist, it's like you are so individual facing, right? Where it's like if you work in an office all day by yourself, you close the door, you can have your panic attack, you can, have your anxiety attack, you can kind of have a breakdown, cry, whatever. And then you can get back to it. Where it's like when you are a therapist or you're a teacher, or you're in these, even like nurses, it's like, where do you go to have to have your meltdown if you need to have a meltdown, or take a minute if you need one? And I think it's just, really learning what boundaries you set, right? And I think just, even, seeing, kids in college now, and I shouldn't call them kids, young adults now in college, and then, working with some of the folks that I do private practice for in the evenings, like as soon as you like close that Zoom window or, end that session, it's like you really have to kind of train yourself to detach because I mean, some of the shit that you hear is just so heavy.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I had to do, and I was talking with my boyfriend about this, is I was like, I have to have like an end time. Like I can't see people. I used to make sessions, until like 8:30 at night. And then it's like, and then I'm going to bed at 9:30 because I'm geriatric. And then I'm just like ruminating for the final hour before I go to bed about this individual and their sexual trauma or the physical abuse they endured or the couple that's going through a divorce, and it's like I like, need time to process that and unwind on my own without, having to, kind of go through the motions, go to bed and just have that like ruminating with me. And so something that I've had to do personally is like like a hard no for checking my email, having a cutoff time that's like earlier in the evening for private practice folks. So it's like, I'm not seeing people past 7 because it's like, I need that time to process my own day.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
and, and then to process what I've just gone through with them. And so I think, really kind of establishing those boundaries, which is so hard to do, I feel like, as a young professional, because we have been so ingrained of like, you always need to be on, right? And if you're new to your industry, you need
Yes.
to be a go-getter. You need to answer your email, accept those projects, take on new clients, like really be, this ambitious person. And it's like, right, but then what's the result? The burnout and hating your field and wanting to quit. And like, I think that was for me part of, why I had left, working with, like younger kids is like in the education system, it's like, be a good teacher, be a good educator, be a good school social worker, take on all these IEPs, qualify all these kids, provide all of these minutes. And then it's like your day is so full, you don't have time to eat lunch, you go home, you have a second job or you have kids or whatever. And then you're exhausted. And then it's like, okay, so I'm a good teacher, like what's a, good school, social worker, what, do I get, an extra day off or anything like that to refuel my battery? No, we're going to give you, harder kids because you're doing such a good job. And it's like, okay, I know I'm a go-getter, but like, again, it's like your ambition and your hardworkingness, like it just like fuels a cycle of, okay, then we're going to give you more work.
Yes. Yep.
Or, you're a great therapist, like we're going to give you some harder clients. And it's like, okay, really kind of setting those boundaries because we're just so ingrained in like, do more work and do it harder. And it's like, okay, but what about our own mental health? So I think it's just, I entirely lost where I was going with that. I'm so sorry. But I think it's, really establishing your boundaries and what you can handle. And as a therapist, I've really kind of had to work past the I'm not a bad person for declining to take on a client where I know that would be too much for me to take on, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, 100%.
when we
And
get
you
like
deserve that right to do
right.
so. Yeah.
It really took me a while to not feel guilt because it's like everyone needs help, right? At some point, and everyone could use support and assistance. And, it's like almost like, well, you chose this field of therapy or social work or education. You're able to handle this. You should be good to go. And it's like, but we all have a threshold. And I don't think people acknowledge and realize that, right? Where it's like, I can only listen to so many couples like arguing and hating each other and wanting divorce in a day. Like, and probably coming from my own experience of, like divorce happening in my family, just, I mean, beyond my own parents, but like, I can only process that so much, right? I can't do 8 hours of that 5 days a
Sure.
week. Like, I just can't. And so I think it's just understanding that it's okay to turn down certain cases because you're at your threshold. And I don't know if anybody else has felt this way, but like for a while I used to feel so guilty. Like I know I should have taken that person. They probably really needed somebody. I should have just kind of, said, fuck it with my own feelings right now. They really need someone. I should have taken them on. And it's like, you can't do that to yourself because it's, again, we have our own capacity and our own limit. And it's like, people don't encourage that enough, right? It's like, no, you're doing really good at your job, or this person really needs help. Like you should take it. And it's like, okay, I guess like I won't, add it on. Sure. Okay. And I feel like we just don't always we don't always put ourselves first. We put our clients first, which I think is it's a great characteristic that we have, as professionals, but it's also like, if we're not in our best spot, how are we going to provide the best therapy? And like, if I'm burnt out and dragging, regardless of the age group, like, how am I going to provide the best support that I can if I'm not at my best? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
so I entirely forgot what the original question was. I'm so sorry.
No, I mean, you hit it.
But
You hit it and you added so much value there. And it's true. I've had people that have come on that have asked me, like, as somebody who has anxiety and panic disorder, how do I talk to people and hear their stories and not like get too entwined with them, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, you stated the same things. I've told them it's boundaries. It's boundaries, but it's also like compartmentalizing is
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fixer, and everyone that knows me well knows that. I'm always, yes, I will help. What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And then this past year, I've just been trying to help myself and fix
Yeah.
myself and what that looks like. So really, like you said, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's being able to take care of yourself still, no matter what that looks like, because we have to.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how many people I talk to that have gone through things that are heartbreaking and terrible, and I wish I could fix it and take it away, it's their story. It's what makes them who they are. And I love the value that the people bring that I speak to. And all we can do is learn. I feel like,
Right.
learn from the stories, learn from the experiences. I might
Mm-hmm.
hear a story one day that I'm like, this is heavy, but you get through it. And then you make the time for yourself to
Mm-hmm.
go over what was bothering you. You're really doing reflection on yourself. Like you've said, if you have back to back to back people, they're like, oh my God, you hate each other, possibly battling divorce or whatever. You have to take back that time in your day to decompose.
Right, right. And I think it's like kind of like you said, like compartmentalizing, and then it's also like I've really tried to, which sounds so robotic, but like give myself, okay, I'm gonna be upset about this case for an hour, right? Like I have this individual who is going through blank, and it is like really weighing on me. I'm gonna give myself this time to process it, but then I need to have like a cutoff time, essentially. And again, it makes me sound like heartless, but it's like otherwise, I mean, I could, perseverate on it for days. And it's like, okay, so I'm going to give
Right.
myself this window to feel. And then I need to, kind of put the walls back up. And like you said, kind of like, okay, this is work. That's what makes them them. Like this is something that, that's why they're reaching out. That's why they're getting support. But it's like I've had to kind of structure this like processing time of like, okay, intake everything that they've told me, work through my own feelings about it. Okay, good to go. Like, let's try and move forward. But I feel like too, as mental health clinicians, it's like, I mean, it's good, but it's sad. It's like you almost become desensitized, right? Where it's like, I mean, you can have people talk to you about the most horrific things, and you get to a point where you're like, you're just
It almost
nodding.
probably doesn't surprise you.
Right. And then you have other people, you'll have people come up to you and be like, oh my gosh, I had a student, today who did blank, or, I, have friends who have shared something about like their children or whatever. And it's like, they expect a reaction from me. And it's like, I don't know if you watch Loki, but it's like that meme where he like looks at you and he goes, oh yes, very sad. Anyway. And it's like, but like, I feel like
Right.
that
Carry
sometimes
on.
right. Where it's like, they expect this like horrific, like look on my face or reaction. And it's like, oh yeah, I have to remind myself like this isn't something that people hear and deal with every day. Like I need to I need to reciprocate like the oh my gosh, like but I feel like we do become desensitized to some things, and we kind of have to remind ourselves that like that's not how everybody else processes things, right? And
Right.
it's just I think it's something that again, it kind of is a natural boundary that comes into place when you're in practice for longer, but like damn, it sucks because yeah, and or like I watch like some of these. I love Forensic Files. I love like Crime Junkie. I love like all of these like murder podcasts, and like I'll listen to them and they're like amazing, and like I love that shit. And my boyfriend will look at me. He's like, "How the fuck do you listen to this?" And I'm like, "It's so amazing, don't you think so?" He's like, "I don't understand what's wrong with you. Like, how are you fascinated by this?" And it's like, I don't know. At this point, it's like. What's a murder compared to like some of the stuff that like, I listen to, I mean, apples and oranges, but it's like, I have horrors that I hear about all week. Like this is nothing, like it's just add it on, like come on, like let's watch Ted Bundy. Come on, it'll be fun. You love fun, so it's just yeah, it's interesting like what we're able to like take on like as clinicians, where it's like some people would be horrified, and you're just like, oh yeah, okay, uh-huh. So, but again, I think that's just like a natural like defense mechanism or boundary or something that we kind of learn to build and put into place for ourselves, because otherwise, I mean, you'd lose your mind
Yeah,
listening to some
life
of the
would
stuff that you
just
have to,
literally swallow you and shit you out.
Oh my
And
gosh,
it just
absolutely.
would not, it would not be good for anyone.
100%. It's like, when I have to like, make like used to have to make like DCFS calls, for, students that were in certain situations, and like, there would be, some teachers, who maybe were new to the field, or, who hadn't, had to make a call yet. And they're like, how are you so calm? And it's like, I mean, you do this enough times, you get into a routine with it. Now, that is a job in, the mental health and social work realm. I don't think I could ever be like a DCFS, like caseworker. I mean, I think that truly, I think, would break me.
Yeah,
Just
that's where I draw a
hearing that
line
all day, I
too.
can't imagine,
Yeah, I cannot do, and I only had ever felt this way when I became a mom,
Mm-hmm.
is I cannot listen to anything related to kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes a very, very strong, compassionate person to do so. Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those people that I know a couple people that work for DCFS and they have kids, and I'm just like, thank you for doing what you do, because
Yeah. Oh
I
my gosh.
couldn't.
And not to go back to the pandemic, but especially then, right? Where it's like school is often the safe place for students, right? Depending on the environment that they go home to. And so then it's like, you imagine all of these kids or those in like domestic violence situations that are stuck in their house. And it's like, I cannot imagine how inundated DCFS was with cases that were
Right.
happening, or maybe it was the opposite because no one was there to like witness and report things. But I literally think about that, where it's like, I cannot imagine, how pandemic was for those workers, because it was like, it just had to be, I mean, it had to be, again, not to bring up the pandemic again, but like, that just had to be such a horrible,
Yeah,
and you
I
can't go
could
to
not
people's houses,
imagine.
we're quarantining, we're masking, like, can we go in? It's just, I can't even,
Yeah.
can't imagine.
No, but there's people out there that do it,
Yeah.
and yeah, hats off to,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, since I've talked to a lot of people in this community, whether it's someone like yourself working in the field that you battle, or survived in, because you have your own mental illnesses that you've battled, and then helping
Mm-hmm.
kids and everything that looks like. And it's just, it's crazy. I feel like I'm almost giving these therapists and social workers a platform to like show that they're human
Oh,
sometimes,
absolutely.
because it's like, and I've mentioned this before, like, you never think that your therapist would have issues, because you're like, that's weird, like, you talk to me about your issues. I don't know, maybe it's just me that like just didn't put two and two together. Like, I thought that my therapist was, they do a great job of acting like they have their shit together if they really don't.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all these therapists and social workers that I've talked to, they're like, oh yeah, like, we battle a ton. And
Well,
I love to
and
hear
it
the story
was,
of what that looks like, because it's just
oh,
like,
absolutely.
fuck, like, it's a lot.
Well, and when I was in grad school, like, one of my teachers had even told me, like, at some point, all of y'all should be in therapy. Like, even if it's not to like, even if it's not
Right.
like there's something inherently wrong with you, but like, just to experience it. And you're going to be dealing with so many of other people's problems. You're going to need an outlet, right? Because it's like, yeah, you
Yes,
can talk
right.
to your spouse, like, you could talk to your mom, you could talk to a friend about it, but it's like, you really like, I mean, how much can you really say, right? Just due to confidentiality. So it's like, how was your day? Well, I had, a student who said this, or I had an individual who was going through blank.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but that's probably all that, that's two
Right. Very,
sentences,
very
right?
minimal. Right.
Right. So it's like, it is helpful to have somebody who, even, I mean, you think of doctors, right? Like, they don't treat themselves, right? They go to other doctors, they go to other medical professionals when they're sick. I mean, at least I guess you hope that they're not just treating themselves at home, but like, I mean, so it's like for therapists, right? It's like everyone needs an outlet. And it's like, I don't know. I agree with you though, and that it's kind of strange to think about like, well, therapists shouldn't have problems, because then then why are they therapists? But again, we're all human. And I think we forget for some professions, that's, that everyone has a threshold and everyone is in fact human. And that's kind of part of why, like, transitioning to private practice and, seeing individuals that are, less of like the elementary age, but like in working with educators, like, that is why I have just been such a huge proponent of just educators need support too. And I feel like if you haven't worked in education, you don't fully understand everything that goes into education, the politics of it, the parents, behaviors, kids, meetings, things like that. Like, I think that it's so helpful to have an individual who's gone through something similar to you. And that's where it can be nice to have a therapist who, also struggles with anxiety, right? Because it's, they're recommending, hopefully strategies to you that they use themselves and that they feel like work.
Right. Yes.
And then same thing with, why I love providing, therapy to those that are in education, because it's like, I get it. Like, there's so many things that if you are in school to go work in the school system that they do not tell you or that you do not expect. And it's helpful to like have somebody who has gone through it themselves, because I try to talk to my friends about, what I've seen, being in an elementary or a middle school. And it's like, they can, be like, oh my gosh, wow, that sucks, or that's horrible. But it's like, do they really, to no fault of their own, but do they really understand like the shit that we deal with? And so I think it's something to be said for having a therapist who has been in your shoes or who is currently in your shoes. And I feel like, to kind of loop it all back, like, in our parents' generation, that may have been a sign of weakness, right? Where it's like, well, you can't go to that therapist because they also have depression. Why would you be getting therapy from them? Whereas now it's like empowering.
It
right?
adds a ton of value. Yeah.
100%. And it's like, well, shit, if I'm fucked up and my therapist is also fucked up, like, this is awesome. Like,
How are we gonna, like,
right. So I think there is something to be said for just like that solidarity of like you said, kind of reestablishing that therapists are human too. And then I think just, it helps with that like rapport piece, I feel like, with your clients as well. It's like, they talk about, disclosure to, your clients and how much you should say and, what you should share about yourself. And, something that, it's probably like the least social worky thing, that I can do. But like, I've had kids, of all ages where they come in and, divorce sucks. I hate this, my parents are arguing, or I hate going back and forth, between the weekends or whatever. And there's something so wonderful, as messed up as it is, about saying, I get it. I also had to do that when I was a kid. My parents were also divorced. And I think it just builds that instant connection of like, oh shit, this person knows what I'm going through. This adult knows what I'm experiencing. They're not just here saying, yeah, that's really awful, I'm sorry, but they've lived it and they've gone through it. And so again, like, am I out there broadcasting, that my, folks aren't together and, like, please come have therapy with me because I know what divorce is like. No, but like, I think when you have a student or an individual who is really struggling with something, offering that like olive branch of like, no, really, I get it. I feel like that just builds an even better instant connection with your 100%. Therapist. So
yeah, 100%. I've said this before too, and I'll say it again. Like, I value what physicians and teachers and everybody have brought to the table that has just done so much research and history and reading everything about mental health. I appreciate that. We'd be nowhere without that, but we would be in a worse place if we did not have people that have lived through these things, personal experience and all, to tell their story and to relate to and resonate with.
Yeah. There's this meme, and oh my God, I feel like you said, like, about talking about the weather and like people are like might be sick of it. I've literally told like 7 people about this, but like there's this meme that I saw, or like this like picture or whatever on Instagram. So instead of like the new saying of like, yeah, how's your day going? Oh, living the dream, or another day in paradise. There's one that I saw and it says, the horrors persist, but so do I. And I'm like, I need it on a mug. Like, I love it. Like, it's true. It's like, everything is going on around us and like shit blows, and that's okay. But like, we're making it through, right? Like, we are, trying to band together in ways that we never have before, and in ways that we can, and unify and battle it together. So it's just, it's been great to see, this kind of community almost kind of just like blow up overnight. And like, how can we advocate for ourselves? And then even better is, how can we advocate for those around us? Like, the amount of students that I have had like walk their friends down to like the counseling center, and be like, she's really going through something, I wanted to walk her here because she was nervous to come here. Like, how fucking awesome is that you have a friend who is wanting to walk you down to the counseling center because they recognize that you are in, whatever position that you are, and that you needed that support to go and talk to someone.
Yeah,
Like,
it's awesome.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's just,
You
and so I
couldn't
think,
ask for more at that point.
right. And it's just, I think that we are really, truly like, leaning on each other and encouraging each other. Whereas, for such a long time, it's been like, every man for themselves. And now it's so much more of like, okay, I'm going to help myself stand up, but I'm going to bring you with me. And like, I'm going to show
Yeah.
you, how you, can also get the same help that I am. I don't know. It's just, it's very cool to see that, like other people advocating for those around them.
Yeah. Yep. I couldn't agree more. And it is the best thing to see. And this community has a lot to offer. And it's huge when we take a step back and,
Mm-hmm.
Realize the good in people still. Cause there is good,
Right.
this world, it's taken away a lot, but it
Yeah.
has not taken away the goodness that a lot of people still carry and that deserve to be, rewarded for the value they bring as well.
Yeah. And I think it's like you said, we're when you turn on the news, it's like, what do you see? And it's just like all of these horrible things and horrible people. And I follow, it's like Some Good News or something. And I think it was started by like John Krasinski from The Office, but it's like every week it's like 10 things that are good that happened like in the world or in the country. And it's like, we need to see more of that because there is so much negative
And
that we
there
are
is
just like
like a good
inundated
amount
with.
of good that's going on, but
Right.
in society, we think that we want to know about all the terrible shit. And it's like, it's
Right.
good to be informed. 100%.
Right.
It is good to be informed and have that information available for you and just overall understand what is realistically going on.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I would love to know all of the good,
Right.
just as equally,
Right. It's just
you
like I
know?
think we're saying with kids. It's like in doses, right? It's like I'll watch the news for 20 minutes and then I need to be done. It's like
Right.
there's the threshold again, right? Like I'm going to handle so much and then I got to turn it off. Um so it's like you said, trying to kind of remind yourself and re-surround yourself with the things that are positive, the good things that are coming out of, like you said, these conversations. Yeah, there's a lot of shit blowing up in the background, but like if you look, look at what we're doing. It's we're having these conversations, we're trying to bring things to the forefront, and I think it's just like you said, that balance.
Yeah. Yep, I do agree, and you do have such a great outlook on life, really, from what I've talked to you about, just the community itself and the work that you're doing. I wish that someone took the time when I was in college or anything growing up school wise to honestly hear me out or even acknowledge something I was going through. We definitely need people like you to continue doing what they're doing, to have their stories be shared, and let them know that it is also okay to make those boundaries for yourself in order to continue to do the work that you do because you're human. At the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, we're all still human. We've either battled mental health, seen somebody that's had a mental health issue. I like to say that I do not believe that no one has been affected by this. I think we all have in one way or the other, however that looks, however it's presented itself. And like I said, you just do a great job of really explaining what the community is and what it continues to need. So I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story with us.
No, absolutely. And I mean, for like folks like you too, who are creating these platforms, right? Where it's like we have this information and these individuals coming on that are easily accessible to us to learn and to educate ourselves and, to hear other perspectives. And, I think that, it takes a village, right? So it's, the place to share your information, the support system from the community to hear you out. And, it's, we're getting there day by day. The horrors persist, but so do I. There you go. Had to drop it
Ex-
in somewhere. But
exactly.
no, and thank you
No.
so much for having me, and thank you for what you do, and for all of the different kind of walks of life, and people that are in different stages, and different professions and things like that you've been interviewing and talking to, because for myself, there's been so many people that you've talked to where it's like, wow, that's really out of my wheelhouse. Like, it's so cool to learn about that. So it's awesome that you're providing this area too.
Yeah, I appreciate that tremendously. And for those listening, if they want to connect with you, where are they able to do so?
So I am on Instagram. So I have a page called In My Life Wellness. My dad and I are huge Beatles fans, and so that's kind of where that
I
came
love
from.
it.
But so I have like a booking system on there. If anyone's interested in therapy services, or even if need some Instagram posts with a little bit of sass and some swearing, I
Oh,
have.
we love that here.
Oh my gosh, it's such a great
Sarcasm,
combo.
swearing, we love the whole
Yep.
thing.
Fueled by coffee. Absolutely. 100%. But so yeah, so that's kind of my main mental health platform. So
Okay, awesome. So for those, again, looking to speak with Caitlyn, she's a great resource. And yeah, don't be a stranger. I really appreciate you coming on here. Hope to continue having more conversations with you and those others that really just have the need to share their story and the want to do so. We need to have to keep continuing to want to do it. And I appreciate you taking the time to really share with us.
absolutely. And enjoy the sunshine for today. Who knows, tomorrow
Here
we
we go.
might.
We brought up the weather again. We were
Yep.
doing
Well, it's
great.
full circle, right? We gotta. But
Welcome
yeah,
to
hopefully,
Illinois.
hopefully you can enjoy some of the nice weather this weekend, and yeah, hopefully no tornadoes next week. So.
Yep. Well, if there's a tornado, I'm sure we'll hear about it together and we'll chat about it.
I'll
So,
send you a message.
right, right. Like there's a tornado coming through, but looks like on Saturday it'll be 80, so we're fine.
Right. Yeah. No, we're good. We're good. No, but I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you again so much, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Yes, thanks, Caitlyn. You too. And we're not gonna push that panic button. We're gonna figure it out. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.